Have you ever wondered what would happen if you suddenly had $100 million? Not 1 million, not 10 million, $100 million. Enough money to buy luxury cars, private jets, dream houses, and almost anything you could ever want. Now imagine something strange. Nobody knows. Not your friends, not your neighbors, not your coworkers, not even your relatives. The money is completely yours, but the secret is yours too. At first it sounds like the perfect situation. Most people believe money problems come from not having enough money, but very few people ever stop to ask a different question. What problems come from having too much money, and what happens when nobody knows you have it? Let's imagine a young man named Daniel. Daniel is ordinary. He lives in a small apartment, he drives an old car, he works a normal job. His coworkers think he's just another employee trying to pay bills and survive another month. Every morning he wakes up, drinks coffee, and goes to work like everyone else. Nothing about him looks special. Nothing about him attracts attention. But one morning, everything changes. Daniel checks an account that almost nobody knows exists, and sitting there is a number that still feels unreal. $100 million. Not a dream, not a fantasy. Real money. Money that belongs to him. The strange thing is that after seeing that number, he still has to get dressed and go to work. The world outside hasn't changed. Traffic is still traffic. The coffee shop still serves the same coffee. His boss still sends the same emails. His coworkers still complain about the same problems. But inside his mind, something is completely different. For the first time in his life, he realizes something powerful. Money changes your options long before it changes your lifestyle. Most people think wealth begins when you buy expensive things, but real wealth begins when you no longer have to do things you hate. Daniel doesn't need to impress anyone. He doesn't need a bigger paycheck. He doesn't need approval from people who have no control over his future. And suddenly, he starts seeing the world differently. The office politics that once seemed important now feel meaningless. The arguments that people have every day suddenly look small. The endless race for promotions doesn't excite him anymore. Because when your future is secure, your perspective changes. And that's when Daniel discovers the first secret of hidden wealth. The greatest luxury is not a mansion. It's not a sports car. It's peace of mind. For the first time in his life, he knows that one unexpected bill cannot destroy him. One bad month cannot ruin him. One mistake cannot bankrupt him. That feeling is worth more than most people realize. Because many people spend their entire lives chasing money, but what they're really chasing is security, and Daniel finally has it. Yet something unexpected begins to happen. Instead of feeling happier every day, he starts feeling something else. Confused. Because if nobody knows he has money, then who is he now? Daniel sat alone in his apartment that night. The same apartment, the same furniture, the same walls, the same silence. Yet everything felt different. For years, he believed money would solve every problem in his life. Now he had more money than most people could spend in several lifetimes. And for the first time, he was beginning to understand a strange truth. Money solves money problems. It doesn't automatically solve life problems. The next morning, he went to work as usual. Nobody looked at him differently. Nobody treated him differently. Nobody respected him more. Nobody admired him because nobody knew. And strangely enough, Daniel liked it that way. He began noticing something he had never noticed before. People behave differently when they think you have money. Some become impressed. Some become jealous. Some become competitive. And some suddenly become very friendly. Not because they care about you, but because they care about what you have. Daniel realized that his secret was protecting him. Every conversation was honest. Every friendship was real. Every interaction was natural. Nobody was trying to gain access to his wealth. Nobody was trying to impress him. Nobody was trying to use him. For the first time, he could clearly see who actually belonged in his life, and that realization was worth millions. A few weeks later, something happened. One of his coworkers walked into the office looking stressed. The man couldn't stop talking about money problems, bills, debt, rent, unexpected expenses. The same problems Daniel used to worry about every day. Daniel listened quietly. Inside his mind, he knew he could solve the man's financial problems instantly. A tiny fraction of his wealth could completely change that coworker's life. But he said nothing. Not because he didn't care, because he understood something important. Money can help people, but money cannot replace responsibility. Many people believe that if they suddenly became rich, they would save everyone around them. Family, friends, neighbors, coworkers. But reality is more complicated. The moment people know you have money, expectations appear, then requests begin, then pressure follows, and eventually your wealth no no longer feels like freedom. It starts feeling like an obligation. Daniel wasn't being selfish. He was being careful because he knew a secret that many lottery winners learn too late. When everyone knows you're rich, everybody suddenly has a plan for your money. Some plans sound reasonable, some sound emotional, some sound urgent, but almost all of them involve giving away pieces of your future. And the scary part is that saying no becomes harder than earning the money in the first place. That thought stayed with him for days. Then one evening, while walking through the city, Daniel saw something that changed his perspective again. A luxury sports car stopped at a red light. People immediately looked at it. Phones came out. Heads turned. Attention followed the car everywhere. A few seconds later, the light turned green and it disappeared into traffic. Daniel smiled because he realized something. Most people don't want wealth. They want evidence of wealth. They want the attention, the status, the recognition, the feeling of being noticed. But real wealth doesn't need an audience. Real wealth works quietly. Real wealth grows quietly. Real wealth gives you choices without asking for applause. And for the first time, Daniel began understanding why some of the richest people in the world live far below what they could afford. Not because they're cheap, not because they're afraid, because privacy itself is a luxury that becomes more valuable as your wealth grows. That night, Daniel returned home and stared at the number again. $100 million. Still there, still real. But now a different question entered his mind. If money wasn't meant to impress people, then what was it actually for? And that question would completely change the way he viewed wealth forever. Daniel sat quietly in the darkness. The city outside was alive. Cars moved through the streets. Lights flickered in distant buildings. Millions of people were still working, worrying, planning, and struggling. And sitting there, alone, was a man with $100 million. A question kept repeating inside his head. What is money actually for? Most people answer that question without thinking. A bigger house, a faster car, luxury vacations, expensive clothes, fine dining. But Daniel realized something strange. Those answers only describe how to spend money. They don't explain why money matters. The next morning, he took a notebook and wrote a simple sentence. If I already had everything I wanted, what would I do tomorrow? He stared at the question for several minutes. Then he realized something shocking. For years, he had been so busy chasing money that he had never thought about what came after it. Most people spend their lives climbing a mountain. Very few stop to ask what they will do once they reach the top. Daniel began writing, travel, learning, building something meaningful, helping people, spending time with family, creating memories, growing as a person. The list surprised him. Almost nothing on it required showing off. Almost nothing on it was about impressing strangers. And that's when he discovered another secret. The things that make life meaningful are often invisible. Nobody sees the book you read. Nobody sees the discipline you practice. Nobody sees the lessons you learn. Nobody sees the quiet mornings where your character is being built. The most valuable parts of life usually happen away from attention. And suddenly, Daniel understood why so many people become disappointed after achieving financial success. They spend years believing money is the destination. Then they arrive and realize money was only transportation. Money can take you somewhere, but it cannot decide where you should go. That decision belongs to you. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And during that time, Daniel made an unusual choice. He didn't buy a mansion. He didn't buy a private jet. He didn't post pictures online. Instead, he bought something far more valuable. Time. He bought freedom from unnecessary stress, freedom from toxic situations, freedom from jobs he hated, freedom from making decisions based on fear. For the first time in his life, he wasn't asking, can I afford this? He was asking, is this worth my time? And he discovered that time and money behave differently. You can lose money and earn it back. You cannot do that with time. Every rich person eventually learns this lesson. Some learn it early, some learn it too late. A billionaire and a minimum wage worker both receive 24 hours each day. The difference is often how they use those hours. Daniel began guarding his time carefully. He spent less time arguing, less time scrolling endlessly on his phone, less time trying to impress people, less time worrying about things he couldn't control. And the more he protected his time, the happier he became. Then one afternoon, another realization hit him. Imagine you have $100 million. What happens if you wake up tomorrow with no purpose, no mission, no goals, no direction? The answer is simple. You become miserable because humans don't need only comfort. They need meaning. Without meaning, comfort becomes emptiness. Without purpose, freedom becomes boredom. Without growth, success becomes stagnant. Daniel finally understood something most people never realize. The goal was never to become rich. The goal was to become free enough to pursue what truly mattered. And once he understood that, the number in his bank account stopped being the most important thing in his life. Something else became more important, the person he was becoming. Because money can change your circumstances, but your character determines what you do with those circumstances. And that realization led Daniel to the biggest question of all. If $100 million could buy almost anything, what are the things it could never buy? And the answer would change everything. Daniel stared at the city lights outside his window. $100 million. The number was still difficult to comprehend. For most people, it sounded like the solution to every problem imaginable. But over time, Daniel had begun noticing something uncomfortable. There were still things he wanted that money couldn't provide. And some of those things were the most valuable things in life. The first was time. Money could buy private flights. Money could buy convenience. Money could buy speed, but money could not buy a single extra minute from yesterday. No billionaire on earth can purchase one additional hour after it has passed. A lost dollar can return. A lost year never does. Daniel thought about all the moments people sacrifice while chasing things they don't even want, missing family dinners, ignoring their health, postponing happiness, delaying life itself, always telling themselves the same story. One day I'll travel. One day I'll spend more time with my parents. One day I'll enjoy life. One day I'll slow down. But life has a habit of moving faster than expected, and suddenly years disappear. Daniel realized something. Many people are rich in money but poor in time, and that's a terrible trade. Then he thought about health. If someone offered him a choice between $100 million and perfect health for the next 50 years, which would matter more? The answer became obvious. Without health, money loses much of its value. A luxurious house means very little if you're too sick to enjoy it. An expensive vacation means very little if your body can't experience it. A fortune cannot fully replace a healthy mind or a healthy body, and yet millions of people trade their health for money every single day. Daniel promised himself he would never make that mistake. Then another thought entered his mind. Trust. Money can buy employees. It cannot buy loyalty. Money can buy attention. It cannot buy genuine respect. Money can buy company. It cannot buy friendship. Someone can smile at you because of your money. Someone can praise you because of your money. Someone can stay close to you because of your money, but none of those things guarantee that they care about you. And that's why trust is priceless. Because trust must be earned. It cannot be purchased. Daniel began looking back at the people in his life, the friends who supported him before success, the people who believed in him before money arrived, the people who expected nothing from him. Those relationships suddenly felt more valuable than ever, because if all the money disappeared tomorrow, those people would still matter, and that is how you know something has real value. Then came another realization: love. For centuries, people have tried to use wealth to attract affection. Some succeed, at least on the surface. But genuine love has a strange requirement. It wants the person, not the bank account, not the status, not the possessions, the person. And Daniel knew that if nobody knew about his wealth, then any connection he built would be based on who he actually was, not what he owned. That thought brought him peace. For the first time, he saw his secret wealth not as something to hide, but as a filter, a way to see reality clearly, a way to know who truly belonged in his life. And then he discovered perhaps the most important lesson of all. Money can improve your life, but it cannot give your life meaning. Meaning comes from contribution. Meaning comes from growth. Meaning comes from becoming someone you're proud of. The world is full of wealthy people who feel empty, and it's full of ordinary people who feel fulfilled. Because fulfillment comes from purpose, not numbers, not possessions, not status, purpose. That night, Daniel closed his laptop and looked at the city one more time. The number in his account hadn't changed. $100 million, but his understanding of wealth had completely changed. He finally understood something that many people spend their entire lives chasing. The richest person in the room isn't always the one with the most money. Sometimes it's the person with the most freedom, the most peace, the most gratitude, the strongest relationships, and the clearest purpose. And that realization led him to a final question, a question that would determine the rest of his life. If wealth is a tool, then what kind of life is worth building with it? Daniel spent the next few days thinking about that question. Not how to make more money, not how to protect his money, not how to spend his money, but how to use it. Because every tool becomes dangerous when it has no purpose. A hammer can build a house or destroy one. Money is no different. And for the first time since becoming wealthy, Daniel felt something more important than excitement. Responsibility. $100 million represented more than freedom. It represented possibility. The possibility to create, to improve, to contribute, to leave something behind. For years, Daniel had believed success was about reaching a destination. Now he understood that success was actually about becoming useful. The people remembered throughout history were rarely remembered because of how much money they had. They were remembered because of what they did with it, the businesses they built, the problems they solved, the opportunities they created, the lives they improved. That realization changed everything. A few months later, Daniel quietly left his job. There was no dramatic speech, no celebration, no announcement, no social media posts. Most people simply assumed he found another opportunity, and he let them believe that because he had stopped caring about being understood by everyone. He only cared about being honest with himself. His days began to look different, not easier, different. He spent more time learning, more time building, more time meeting people who shared his values. He invested in projects that could genuinely help others. He supported ideas that created opportunities. He funded solutions instead of chasing attention, and something unexpected happened. The more he focused on contribution, the less he thought about his bank account. The number was still there, but it no longer controlled his emotions because he had discovered a strange truth. The happiest days of his life were not the days he made the most money. They were the days he made the biggest difference. Years passed. Daniel grew older, wiser, calmer. His wealth continued to grow, but something else grew faster. His impact. The people he helped started helping others. The opportunities he created continued creating opportunities. The decisions he made years ago continued affecting lives he would never even meet. And one evening, sitting in a quiet room, Daniel thought back to the moment everything began. The moment he first saw $100 million in that account. Back then, he thought the money was the prize. Now he knew better. The money had only been a test of character, a test of wisdom, a test of priorities, because money doesn't automatically make people better. It reveals who they already are. Give a selfish person more money, and they often become more selfish. Give an insecure person more money, and they often become more insecure. Give a wise person more money, and they gain the ability to do more good. The money never creates the character. The character directs the money, and that may be the most important lesson of all. If you woke up tomorrow with $100 million and nobody knew, what would you do? Would you spend your life trying to impress strangers? Would you chase status? Would you buy things you don't need? Or would you build something meaningful? Would you create freedom? Would you strengthen relationships? Would you become the person you always wanted to be? Because the real question was never about having $100 million. The real question is this: if money removed all your excuses, who would you choose to become? And maybe that's why this story matters, because most of us will probably never have $100 million. But we don't need $100 million to learn the lesson. We can choose our priorities today. We can choose discipline today. We can choose purpose today. We can choose growth today. And every meaningful life begins the same way, with a decision, a quiet decision that nobody notices at first. A decision to stop living by default and start living intentionally. Because in the end, wealth is not measured by what you own. It's measured by the freedom you create, the people you help, the relationships you protect, and the life you build. And those are treasures that no market crash, no economic crisis, and no amount of bad luck can ever take away. The city lights continued shining outside. The world kept moving. Most people never knew Daniel's secret, and that was perfectly fine, because he had finally discovered something far more valuable than money. He had discovered what money was actually for.